So our main passage today is Proverbs 2, verse 6. It says, "For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding." And what we're going to focus on today is discovering wisdom. So first and foremost, Proverbs 2:6 is telling us where we get wisdom from. Like if we're going to discover wisdom, we need to know where it is. Proverbs 2:6 through 15 talks about its benefit and how it will actually save you from the ways of wicked men. I tell this to the students, especially as we're traveling through Proverbs right now. I can't think of any other characteristic in your life that will take you further than wisdom. Everybody, any employer I've ever met in my life wants somebody working for them that is wise. They know when to work. They know how hard to work. They know when not to work. They know what to do and how to do it. Those are all things of wisdoms. And see, when we walk in wisdom, God protects us. He helps us to make better decisions and keeps us away from danger and regret. And so here are just real quick, you can write these down if you want, but I've just got a list of 4 things that are the benefit of wisdom. First and foremost, we get protection. Wisdom keeps you from getting caught up in the wrong crowd. It keeps you away from the wrong places. We see that in Proverbs 6, verses 11 through 12. Next, it gives us discernment. We see that in verse 9. It helps you to know right from wrong, even when it's not obvious. So I'm a very black and white person. I think wrong is wrong and right is right. That's not always easy to see because we live in a very gray world where decisions aren't as cut and dry as we would like them to be. If we grow in wisdom, it helps us to identify those things properly. Next, wisdom gives us guidance. So we've got protection, we've got discernment, and it gives us guidance. God guards the paths of his faithful followers. He protects us. He guides our steps and he makes our paths clear. And next, he gives us discretion. A wise person will think before they act, will think before they say anything. And again, this protects us from regret and it protects us from trouble. So in your outline here, let's get started our opening thoughts on wisdom. Number 1 is it takes wisdom to see wisdom's value. Like you need to have a little wisdom to understand that wisdom has value. Proverbs 8:11 says wisdom is better than jewels. Wisdom is better than jewels. It has value and more value than money. It's knowing what to pursue and what not to pursue. Proverbs 16:16 says, "How much better is it to get wisdom than gold? And to get understanding is to be chosen above silver." This is written by a guy who was extremely wise. This was written by a guy who was extremely wealthy. And he is saying wisdom is far greater than any amount of wealth I could have ever acquired. Pursue wisdom and it will serve you well. Proverbs 9:11 says, "By me your days will be multiplied and years of your life will be added to you." Those are all valuable things. Living a long life, knowing that wisdom is going to protect me from things far better than gold, far more than gold. And wisdom is better than jewels. When we look at Proverbs 9:11, it says, "By me your days will be multiplied and years of your life will be added to you." And me there is wisdom to extend one's life. So this is not, be very careful here. That's not an absolute promise of safety. That's not an absolute promise of health. For all people in all times, it's just not the case. We don't live in that kind of world. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. But if we're wise, what we see in that is that it's like going to the doctor and the doctor tells you, eat healthy, you'll live longer. Don't eat sugar. You'll eat longer, you'll avoid diabetes, all kinds of things. It's not an absolute, because one of the healthiest guys I ever met, went to the gym with him. He ran like a million laps, it seemed like, every single time I was in there. died in a car wreck. But the truth is, if we're wise, if we are making better decisions, our chances increase. So it's not an absolute promise. It's not a guaranteed thing because we live in a cursed world. But the truth is, the wiser I am, the better chance I have for my days to be extended. A life of obedience to God's instructions is a good life. It's a good life. It's a safe life as far as knowing what to avoid and when to avoid it. But as things have recently unfolded, we see that we're not all protected from harm at all times, even if we are wise. Number 2, it takes wisdom to recognize wisdom. Ecclesiastes 12, 9 through 14. This is the end of Solomon's journey. This is the end of his pursuit of wisdom. And he summarizes his pursuit in these verses. He says, the words of wise men are like goads. The masters of these collections are like well-driven nails, and they are given by one shepherd. But beyond this, my son, be warned, the writing of many books is endless, and excessive devotion to books is wearying to the body. The conclusion, when all has been heard, is this: fear God and keep his commandments, because this applies to every person. For God will bring every act to judgment, everything which is hidden, whether it is good or evil. Well, Solomon finally realized in his pursuit of wisdom is what wisdom actually is. You can read all the books you want to read. You can listen to all the speakers you can listen to. You can curate all the podcasts that you can curate. But Solomon, being as wise as any other man who's ever walked the earth, tells us what wisdom truly is. And it's understanding that God will bring every act to judgment. That's wisdom. See, people today, they get enamored by names, positions, charisma, whatever it is. And they think, oh, that person's so spiritual, that person's so wise. And anybody with some wisdom, anybody with some discernment can say that guy's using a whole bunch of words to say a whole lot of nothing. He's a mile wide and he's an inch deep. And it's like this. In the same way that someone skilled in a field can truly recognize the depth in that field, spiritual maturity is recognized by people with spiritual maturity. Like, here's an example. There are big artists out there. There are big musicians. They don't write any of their songs. They don't write any of their material. And you know what? That didn't bother me a bit. I couldn't care less. But somebody who does do those things, it bothers them. Because they know that that's a talent. And they know that the person benefiting from that is not the person who's actually doing the work. I don't know anything about music. I don't particularly listen to it a lot, so I don't really care. I don't recognize the depth in what's going on. One of the most annoying things in the world to me is for me to be riding in my truck in silence, which is true, and for somebody to be like, you hear that? You hear that? I'm like, no, I didn't. I don't want to. But see, I don't have any knowledge in music, so I don't recognize any talent in music. But I do have some spiritual maturity, so I do recognize what spiritual maturity actually is. I've gone to some of these meetings for some of these ministry events. I don't particularly like going to them. I'm not going to talk about the, whatever they're called, whatever three-letter thing they are, whatever their names are, but I go to these things and I hear people talking a bunch of nonsense. And one time there was this guy talking, and we were dealing with a lot of stuff at Gibbs at that time, and he kicked his foot in the air, and he said, Satan's going to take a big L in Knox County this year. And everybody was hooting and hollering, clapping their hands like, yeah. I was like, he didn't say anything. He's not providing anything for anybody other than our big rah-rah speech, so you donate to his organization. And I walked out of there, I was like, thanks for the free chicken, but I gotta go. And I don't go back to those things. I want to do real work. I want to really get to know kids. I want to really pass on wisdom to them so that they know how to interface with the real world. There are big churches with big names who don't even write their own sermons. That bothers me. But I could care less if a country music star doesn't write his own music. My point being there is it takes wisdom to recognize wisdom. And this is, we used to go to Passion. It's a college conference in Atlanta. And the speakers, for the most part, had very little to offer to me because they were only down there because they had name recognition. They were well known, but they were not well thought out. And some of you have gone to those things. I've gone to those things. I've heard, I'm mature enough to chew the meat and spit out the bones. Like, I get all that. But I'm simply saying this, is when it comes to wisdom, it takes one to know one. I'm challenging you all to seek depth and see its value. I'm not saying that those people who go to those things or who sit under churches like that are insincere or that God can't use them. But wisdom helps us to test the depth of the well we're drinking from. To test the depths of the well we're drinking from. So it takes wisdom to recognize wisdom. Number 3 is it takes wisdom to know where to find it. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says this, bad company corrupts good morals. It takes wisdom to discern, is this good company or bad company? Do I need to get away from them or do I need to lean into what they're saying? Proverbs 14:6 says a scoffer seeks wisdom and finds none, but knowledge is easy to one who has understanding. A scoffer can't find wisdom because they don't know where to look. But knowledge is easy to one who has understanding. Proverbs 15:2 says the tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable, but the mouths of fools spouts folly. I'm going to say this. It's going to sound a little crude. Please know, I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just making a point. And I'm saying it this way, so tonight, when you're thinking about the message, after you've eaten all your food and all that stuff, you can remember this part, okay? Don't get a fat personal trainer. You know what I'm saying? Sorry. Like, don't take health advice from somebody who's clearly not living it. Not being mean, I'm not saying there's not overweight, great personal trainers. It's just a simple, crude statement so that you remember it. Don't listen to shallow preachers. Don't listen to preachers who tell you rah-rah stories, lie in those stories so that they're more funny, so that they're more relatable, and don't bring you the Bible. I would rather listen to somebody who offends me a little bit because he's preaching the word than somebody who makes me feel good after. Like, oh, that story about that dog was hilarious. No thanks. I want to hear what God has to say to me. And God speaks to me through his word. And here's the final point. I'm going to pick on somebody else. One time I went to Belize. It was my senior trip. And Mark Fields and I were standing in a market. So first time I've ever been down there, was kind of, staying with him, sticking with the guys like Dustin and Jimmy who had been down there before because I was a little scared. It's like foreign country. I don't want to have to go to a hospital down here, all those things. And so everyone's kind of shopping for souvenirs and it's all really neat. And we're in this market. And Mark looks at me and says, let's go to one of those. And what he's pointing to is this little street taco top setup where they've got a flat grill and there's no way, absolutely no way the health department has ever been there to, it's just no way. And it looks nasty and that guy's sweating everywhere. And Mark looks at me and he goes, there's no way all these people are wrong. Like, how wise? And so what did I do? I followed him over there. We ate something off that little stand, and it's one of the best meals I've ever had in my life. I've never had anything like it. He can still tell you what they were. It was a sopapita or something like that. It was so good is what it was. So now if Mark tells me someplace to eat, I'm going because it's good. I'll never not listen to him when it comes to food. So back to my point is it takes wisdom to know where to find it. You want wise people telling you where wisdom is located so that you can acquire it. So here are some principles about wisdom. And the first one is this: you must ask for wisdom. James 1:5 says this, "But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him." Here's how I look at this. Not that God's some big bully up in the sky who's like, I have all this stuff, but I'm not going to give it to you unless you ask. I look at it like this. Is we ask God for wisdom, and it reveals the posture of our heart. It reveals that, God, I want to do things the way that you want me to do them. And I am limited in my understanding and my knowledge. Would you please bring wisdom to my life? See, wisdom isn't just good advice. It's a treasure worth seeking with all your heart. It protects, it guides, and it leads you closer to God. And chasing wisdom is like chasing after a treasure. Proverbs 2:1-5 says, "If you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as silver and search for it as hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God." Wisdom doesn't just fall into our laps. It requires effort. It requires passion. It requires persistence. The Bible, again, compares seeking wisdom to a treasure hunt. It's valuable, and you must seek after it. Number 2, you must ask persistently for wisdom. So not only are we to ask, we have to ask over and over and over and over. In Luke 11:5-8, it's this parable about how important persistence is in the Bible. And Jesus is teaching, and he says, "Suppose one of you has a friend and goes to him at midnight and says to him, 'Friend, lend me 3 loaves. For a friend of mine has come to me from a journey, and I have nothing set before him.' And from inside he answers and says, 'Do not bother me. The door has already been shut. And my children are in bed. I cannot get up and give you anything.' Verse 8, I tell you, even though he will not get up and give him anything because he is his friend, yet because of his persistence, he will get up and give him as much as he needs." Persistence. Persistence. God, I don't understand what this is. I need some wisdom here. And then you walk away and you're like, I still don't understand. So you go back to him. God, reveal to me what's supposed to go on here. The reason that persistence is so important is because it puts it at the forefront of your mind so that you see God teaching, giving you wisdom in life. You have no idea how many times I've heard stories of people not getting the point, moving on, and then blaming God. Like, oh, he didn't teach me quick enough. Oh, he didn't get back to me quick enough. You're revealing the posture of your heart there. You're revealing your lack of patience. Be persistent. Ask him and ask him and ask him and ask him. Number 3, you must ask God for his wisdom because you're lacking in it. 1 Corinthians 1:20-21 says, "Made foolish the wisdom of the world. Since the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not come to know God. God was well pleased through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe." When this was written and where it was written, it was very common for people to be spiritual, okay, quote unquote. They had all kinds of gods. They had, like, Greek mythology was extremely prevalent. There's all kinds of gods for all kinds of things. And what they believed back then is that the gods were distant. The gods then were far off. And the foolishness of God was sending Jesus down to earth and for people to kill him. What kind of God is that? That's foolish. If mankind can kill him, can put him on a cross, can make him suffer, that's no God. And that's foolishness to that culture. What we have to do is say, God, make sense of that for me. How could our Savior come down to earth and die for my sins? That doesn't make a lot of sense independent of understanding who God is, how much he loves us, and the lengths in which he's willing to go for us to spend eternity with him. But to a culture today, they're like, why was he so weak? Why couldn't he just come and rule and reign? See, the Bible says in 1 Corinthians, it says that Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God. If you want true wisdom, you're not just chasing knowledge. You're not just chasing facts. You're chasing Jesus. Wisdom isn't just knowing what's right, it's knowing who is right. It's not just about being smart. It's about being surrendered. Being surrendered is foolishness to the world today. It looks weak. We find power in it because of who we're surrendering to. Isaiah 55:8 says his ways are not our ways and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. We lack godly wisdom. We don't think like he thinks. Proverbs 2:6 says, for the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. True wisdom doesn't come from the internet. It doesn't come from YouTube. It doesn't come from friends. It doesn't even come from academia. It comes from God. All truth is God's truth. So it starts with respecting and honoring him. We also call this the fear of the Lord. That's where wisdom starts. See, the pursuit of knowledge apart from God is what led to the fall. Pursuit of knowledge apart from God is what led to the fall. Genesis 3:1-7 is the story of the fall at the start of the Bible. Genesis 3:6, I really want to read this. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was a delight to her eyes and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took from its fruit and ate. And she gave also to her husband with her, and he ate. And that the tree was desirable to make one wise. Maybe I could be a little smarter. Maybe I could figure things out. The pursuit of knowledge apart from God is what led to the fall. So we need to be asking God for his wisdom because we're lacking in it, instead of being in pursuit of our knowledge, of our fact findings, just so we can be the smartest person in the room. And that brings us to number 4. You must ask for the right reason. If we're going to be asking for wisdom, we need to be asking for the right reason. 1 Kings 3:10-13. This is when Solomon's about to become king. And he's about to ask for, like, these are the things I need to be a king. The Bible says, I am young. I don't know whether to go in or come out. Like, that's how remedial he is. And Solomon asked so that he can judge this kingdom for wisdom. And 1 Kings 3:10 through verse 13 is the response to this, God's response to Solomon's request. He didn't ask so that I could be the richest king. He didn't ask so that I could be the wisest king. He asked so that he could properly lead God's people. And verse 10 says, it was pleasing in the sight of the Lord that Solomon had asked these things. God said to him, because you have asked these things and have not asked for yourself long life, nor have asked for riches for yourself, nor have you asked for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself discernment and to understand justice, behold, I have done according to your words. Behold, I have given you a wise and discerning heart, so that there has been no one like you before you, nor shall one like you arise after you. So the principle we see there is Solomon asked for the right reasons, and he got way more than he bargained for or he asked for. James 4:3 tells us, you ask and you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, so that you may spend it on your pleasures. I'm trying to teach my kids about money right now. And we were at a store, and Ella saw a toy she wanted, and we told her no. This was about a month and a half ago, 2 months. Everything runs together now, okay? It might have been last week, for all I know. It can't be last week. It was a few months, because then we were like, hey, we're going to teach you how to earn money. We're going to teach you these principles here. And we gave her some chores. And 50 cents per chore, 50 cents per chore. And then she started realizing that grandparents pay better than parents. And so she's like, I'm going to go sweep Grammy's house. I'm going to go to Bunny's house, and she's going to give me $5 for picking up rocks. I'm like, hey, Mom, that's not, okay. So anyways, she's worked so hard to get this toy. So hard. And Friday, I was not feeling well at all. Friday morning, we woke up, and she's like, hey, Dad, do you think today we can go and get that toy? So, oh, yeah. Of course, you've worked so hard. Thank you for asking me. And so we get down there, and we're like, hey, Ella, surprise. You've worked so hard. We're going to buy this other one that matches so that you have a little bit more than what you asked for. That's me, an imperfect dad, selfish, sinful, whatever. Like, I'm not perfect. Imagine to the degree in which God will answer our prayers if we go to him with right motives. And we don't ever ask. All we say is, God, why am I in this? God, why do I have to go through this? God, why is there so much pain in my life? Why are we not asking him for wisdom? How do I navigate this? What do you want to teach me here? He will bless you beyond measure. He will give to you far more than you ask. Wes Huff, he's like this Bible scholar. He said something really good. And I think it's how we treat wisdom. He says, do not be the smartest person not in heaven. I think it's brilliant. I think it's convicting, because I can think about all the times where I've asked God for something and I know that my motives were not pure. God, give me wisdom here so I can impress somebody listening to me. No, it's God, give me wisdom so that I have something to pass on to people so that they can be more like your son. Like the end goal should always be, how do I best pass on the gospel of Jesus to others? That's why we're seeking wisdom. So when we ask, and we ask properly, and we ask with the right motives, and we ask the right people, we start discovering wisdom. So next section in your outline here is discovering wisdom. See, by discovering wisdom, we realize our lack of wisdom. 1 Corinthians 3:18 says, let no man deceive himself. If any man among you thinks that he is wise in this age, he must become foolish so that he may become wise. Thomas Sowell says this, it takes a considerable knowledge just to realize the extent of your own ignorance. As I have grown in wisdom, as I have improved in these areas, what I've realized and what I try to do now is I try to go into each situation with there's a chance I could be wrong. There's a chance that I might not have the entire picture here. Dealing with people, I've realized that they can only see it the way that they've seen it. Before we go into conflict, before we go into a situation where we have to work something out, we should be praying, God, give me wisdom to see the other side. So here's some wisdom that you can take home with you. It's one of my favorite sayings. No matter how flat the pancake, there are always two sides. No matter how flat the pancake, there are always two sides. The Gospels are a great picture of this. They lived it out. They walked with Jesus. And Jesus spoke to them in parables. He gave them clues. He gave them answers, whatever you want to call it. And later, when they wrote the Gospels, they call back to this stuff. Like, as they've grown, as they've seen Christ work in their life, as the Holy Spirit has increased them in wisdom, they point out just how dumb they were. And that's not, I'm not being mean. They point out how wrong they were, how they missed it. John 12:16 says, these things his disciples did not understand at first. But when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered that these things were written to him, or of him, and that they had done these things to him. As they grew in wisdom, they realized how unwise they truly were. They grew, they progressed, they understood. They know now what they didn't know then. Here's a challenge. How many of you need to look back at some things you didn't handle well and apologize? Need to go to somebody, maybe in this church, who you have had conflict with. Say, I didn't handle that right. Stop being afraid of that being a sign of weakness and start seeing it as a sign of growth. I've grown up. I'm sorry I was that way. I was wrong. And what that shows you, more than it shows the other person, is God's done a work in me. And I can see now what I couldn't see then. One of the dumbest things I've ever done in my life, I mean, just absolutely, it haunts me to this day, that made that a little heavier than it actually was. We had culverts in our neighborhood, and it was where all the storm drains went off into. And we were riding bikes in it because it's kind of like a little half pipe and you kind of do some fun stuff off of it. But the culvert was probably 3 foot high and the pipe was ran there into this concrete storm drain, but you could ride off. And I was like, I bet I could ride off that. And I stood there and I was like, I'm gonna fall. Like, there's no way I'm not falling. I'm gonna do it anyways. And I rode off the end of that culvert. I fell straight on my face. It's a wonder I didn't break every bone in my body, and I hit my face on the side. I was so dumb. And what I realize now is if I had any wisdom, not just knowledge, it would have changed the way I behaved. And that's the difference in knowledge and wisdom. Number 2 here is you discover God's wisdom to the degree in which you seek it. For some of you, the freedom in going to that person and apologizing is a sign of how much you've been seeking after him and how much you want to do things right. Matthew 7, verse 7 through 8 says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds. And to him who knocks it will be open. Seek and you will find. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened. Ask for wisdom and it will be revealed to you. The Bible is more of a compass than a roadmap. Does it make sense? We want it to be a roadmap. I'm in conflict. Tell me how to handle it. The Bible's pointing to north. The Bible is pointing to Jesus. There's some directions that we need to seek out so that it's more clear. And the more we study the Bible, the more clear our direction becomes. The more we seek his word and his wisdom, the more clear the path becomes for us. So we should be seeking it a lot. I've talked to the boys that I lead this morning. Like Proverbs over and 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 over tells us not to depart from this wisdom. Don't depart from this wisdom. Because we're making decisions over and over and over and over and over and over on a daily basis, like every single day. We need to be seeking in kind. If I have to make this many decisions, I should be seeking God's wisdom in all those decisions. Number 3, when you discover wisdom, it brings heartache. When you discover wisdom, it brings heartache. Ecclesiastes 1:18 says, because in much wisdom there is much grief, and increasing knowledge results in increasing pain. You think about this as a parent, and it makes perfect sense to you. Like if you just listen to me, it's going to save you a world of trouble. If you didn't know that what they were going to do is going to cause them trouble, you wouldn't have any heartache. But because you know how it turns out, you have heartache. Think about the burden of sitting on your couch and knowing what play to run and when to run it. Knowing when to kick a field goal or when not to. You know, you talk about some pain, you talk about some heartache. We're sitting there on our thrones with all the wisdom. If only that headset connected to our house, you know? I am joking, but I really do wish we would have hit that field goal, okay? But it's a silly point to make one. When you discover wisdom, it will bring heartache because you know better. You think back at your life. If wisdom revealed to us reveals our ignorance, we got to look back at our lives and be like, man, I got that wrong. Man, I missed on that. That's heartache. Understanding just how not like God we truly are. Number 4, when you discover godly wisdom, you sow peace. Wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord, but it ends with peace in Him. Wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord, but it ends with peace in Him. James 3:17-18 says, but the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without hypocrisy. And the seed whose fruit is righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. You can think of it this way. A gentle word turns away a multitude of wrath. Wisdom, God's goal for your life, is not conflict, it's sanctification. Wisdom is far greater than a moment. Knowing that this person may be laying into me right now, saying a bunch of stuff to me that I don't want to hear. But there's something greater at stake than just this moment. I'm going to use a kind word to turn away a multitude of wrath. It's knowing that your soul is anchored in Christ and there's no way it's not holding. No matter what this world throws at me, I am anchored in Christ and it's immovable. You may be able to harm me, but you can't move me because I'm anchored in Jesus. That's wisdom. Number 5 is we discover God's wisdom from others. As much as I don't like hearing that, it's the truth. Proverbs 11:14, it says, where there is no guidance, the people fall, but in abundance of counselors, there is victory. And Proverbs 18:1-2 says, he who separates himself seeks his own desire. He quarrels against all sound wisdom. A fool does not delight in understanding, but only in revealing his own mind. A fool just talks. They use a bunch of words. They don't say anything. A wise person listens. A wise person lets the other person reveal their foolishness. Does that make sense? Like Charles Barkley, it's not Charles Barkley. I say that every time. One time somebody corrected me on it. He says it's better to remain silent than to remain silent and let people think you're smart than to open your mouth and reveal all doubt. Or to remain silent and for people to believe you're a fool than to say one word and to remove all doubt. And if it wasn't Charles Barkley, I don't know who it says, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Benjamin Franklin, I don't know, one of those guys. Spurgeon, okay? One of those guys who gets quoted in every single message. Point being, we should be listening to other people. You're not going to like this, then we'll say it, and it is what it is. You should first and foremost be going to community groups. You should first and foremost be going to youth group. You should be plugged into a community. You should not just show up second hour. Sorry. It's a multitude of counselors, not just one. And I think a lot of the reason we don't plug into these community groups is because we don't believe that we need people. I come from that same ilk. It's because the people who let me down, I was like, well, I'll never let somebody back into my life with the opportunity to let me down again. So I'm just going to stay away from people and pretend like I don't need them. As I've grown up and I've learned from other people's, I see the need for myself, selfishly, to be around other people. But the other part is, if we circle back around to Solomon and what he asked for wisdom to pass it on to other people. And how do you do that? Walking into second hour when the countdown's going and leaving before the music's over. Uh-oh, shots fired. You don't. You don't. If we truly believe that wisdom comes from God, then we've got to grapple with what he says. Wisdom is not about what's right, it's about who's right. Very, very important stuff. And God tells us is that we discover wisdom from others. Number 6, we discover our wisdom or foolishness by our actions. James 3:13 says, "Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show by his good behavior, his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom." Wisdom received is wisdom revealed. Wisdom discovered is wisdom revealed. Think back to the dumbest thing I ever did that's not the dumbest thing I ever did in my life, but riding that bike off that culvert, off that drain tile, and falling flat on my face, I knew better. Like, I 100%, before I did it, I said, this is dumb. I should not do this. Like, remember it clear as day. I knew better, but I didn't do better. That's not wisdom. That's knowledge. I know I shouldn't do that, but I'm going to do it. And I've been plagued with that for a lot of my life, okay? Wisdom has legs. It changes your actions. It's revealed through your behavior. Matthew 7, verses 24 through 27 shows what a wise man does. He builds his house on the rock. His wisdom, his knowledge had actions. He revealed what he knew. He revealed who he was and what he believed in by doing something. So I'm going to recap really quick and I'll get y'all out of here before the worship starts. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Wisdom protects, it guides, it reveals, and it anchors us. This is what I want for you all from this message. I want you guys to ask God for it, for wisdom, persistently, humbly, and for the right reasons. To share, to be a blessing to somebody. He gives generously and without reproach. Without reproach means that he's not going to shame you for not having it. He just wants you to ask. He just wants you to ask him and to then be blessed by and be a blessing to others. And it anchors you in Christ. Christ is the wisdom of God. And all wisdom points us back to him.